escalation versus de-escalation. The question I get asked sometimes and told sometimes, what's right and what's wrong. Here's what's important to understand. There's certain situations where de-escalation is not an option. If we have the option to de-escalate a situation, of course we're going to go for that. However, it's important to understand when it comes to a lot of the attacks, there's no time to de-escalate, especially when it comes to surprise attacks. If someone is surprise attacking you, as in they're attacking you when you least expect it, then there's no time to try to de-escalate it. We have probably heard of fight or flight before, but there's also something else. There's freeze, there's flight, there's fight, and then there's something called fall, which is basically begging for mercy, where you're almost trying to befriend the attacker, which is also very common because in our society, we have been brought up very often with a fear of aggression. I'm not saying that we should be more aggressive as people, but in certain situations, aggression is your only way out. And therefore, de-escalation is not going to be an option. So let's go over the situations where de-escalation might be an option. For example, a female at a bar, a guy is being a little bit getting too close, maybe a little too touchy. Grabbing a glass or a bottle and smashing it over the head is probably not the right answer. You'll probably find yourself in a jail cell and you might not end up harming the person permanently, but you can do some real damage with glass, right? That's not the right response. Maybe pushing the person off, putting a hand on them, taking their hands off of you and say, hey, keep your hands to yourself, keep away from me. That's de-escalating a situation. If you're out in the street by yourself and 2 or 3 guys are coming up and doing that, then perhaps de-escalating it is the first step, but there's a good chance if they picked you as the victim that fighting is going to be your only option. And I'm not saying that when you're out walking on the street, someone approaches you, the first thing that you should do is throw a punch. But sometimes that surprise punch is going to be your only way out of that situation, where you maybe get to throw that punch to buy yourself some time so you can get into that grocery store or go somewhere where there's a lot of people around you. But it's important to remember that de-escalating is not always going to be an option, and escalating a situation is also important to understand, and that's truly where I want to focus this, which is once you have decided that de-escalating is not an option and therefore escalating is your only option, there's no going back after that. Very common question that I get is, should I have a knife? Should I have mace? Should I have something with me in my purse? Yes, potentially, but same thing goes there. Once you take that knife out of your purse or your pocket, wherever you keep that knife, you have now escalated that situation. So it's important to remember, once you take that knife out, are you going to use it, and is it necessary to use it in a self-defense situation? So either you're protecting yourself with lethal force using the knife because you're being attacked with lethal force, because you have to be able to justify what you're doing in the court of law. Were you considering your life being at risk? Then you have the right to defend yourself with lethal force, and that's what a knife is. But also what's important to remember is, if you're not willing to use this knife to defend yourself, then it's very likely going to end up in the attacker's hands, and they're going to be able to use it to defend themselves or attack you with it. So it's important to remember that anytime you take a step towards escalation, there's no going back from that. And it's also important to remember that de-escalating is not always going to be an option. Share this with a loved one and be sure to subscribe.